Hello, everyone, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Better the Pond Pondcast, the Flying V edition, where we talk to incredible people who are creating ripples and impact on the pond. My name is Warren Berry, and I'm your host and the founder of Instinctive Solutions, where we believe that everyone is an odd duck, but that's what makes them awesome. Today, my guest is Alex Makarski, self-proclaimed data nerd, marketing genius, and all-around great guy. Alex is the founder of Clickmakers and MeasureBit. Alex was born in the Ukraine, went to university in Moscow, and had various jobs before moving to Canada. His mother and father were both teachers, and as you will discover, Alex has become a lifelong learner. Now, Alex measures his company's success by how many clients he can kick out of the nest so they can go and fly on their own. He believes that most of the world's problems can be solved if we just sat down and communicated, just talked. Alex gets to better the pond by making other companies successful. Ladies and gentlemen, Alex Makarski. All right, so Alex Makarski, all the way from right now at the moment in Mexico, which is fabulous. I really want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to be a guest on my Better the Pond podcast. It is great to have you.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Warren.
You're very welcome. So before we jump into this, Alex, and into the questions, you could right now, we talked a little bit earlier, but you got Clickmakers as your company. Can you just sort of give, my listeners just a sort of an overall view of what is it that your company does?
Sure. The short of it is we run ads, or quoting Mark Zuckerberg in the Senate, Senator will run ads. That's what we do. We do it profitably. We became a Google Premier partner a year ago, almost to the date, which puts us in the top 3% of all US agencies for Google, whichever yardstick they use for that. I'm not sure of the criteria, but they recognize our work in some way. We also, we essentially a bunch of engineers who run ads. And I have two companies. One is called Clickmakers.io. The other one is MeasureBit.com. So Clickmakers is the team that runs ads. MeasureBit is a team that works on data, conversion tracking, attribution, all this big data stuff that is becoming super important and difficult because of privacy and platforms changing things. But this is the two things that we focus on. We're very heavy on data, and we are very good at running digital ads because we're so strong when it comes to data.
So this is why when I look you up, Alex, so you come as a certified data nerd.
I don't know if there's an official certification. A self-anointed
data nerd. And I have to do this quick shout out that it was Kevin Thompson, actually, who's got the $1 Million Relationship podcast and his Tribe for Leaders. And he's the one who actually set this up. So we'll give Kevin a little bit of a shout out while we're chatting here.
Well, if we have time at some point, there's an interesting story of me connecting with Kevin like a bunch of years ago, and then reconnecting, like losing this connection because of what one of my clients did to him. And then reconnecting around the time I was starting this agency.
Perfect. Okay. Well, you know what? We definitely have to work that in somewhere in the podcast here.
Awesome.
So let's jump right into this here, Alex. So, here's my question. What got you from being a gosling? And I mean, talk about like your very, very beginnings, to leaving the nest when you decided that you were going to take off and on your own and get out and into the world, and your parents either you left the nest or your parents kicked you out of the nest, to where you are today. Alex Makarski, what is your backstory?
I'll try to keep it relatively short, but there's not one, but several nests that I left along my path. And the very first one, I grew up in a place called Kursk in Russia, bordering on Ukraine, just outside of the city. So I grew up in the sticks. My parents still live there. My brother is still there in his family.
Are they okay?
And they are okay, but they're very close to all the bad stuff that's going on there.
Yeah.
But otherwise they're fine. Kind of sucks that I can't go and see them there right now. Not entirely impossible, but it just creates difficulties in so many ways. But that's where I grew up. Left my parents' home when I was 16 to go to university in Moscow. That's where I got my engineering degree, and that's when the Soviet Union collapsed. And I was already married as a student, and we had a child. And my plan was to stay in the lab and do some scientific work, but that job didn't pay at the time, like when the country was collapsing around you. So I had to go and seek employment in the private sector. And after, going from one miserable job to another, I landed a gig at an up-and-coming company that was selling ERP systems, like accounting, business management systems, software systems, to all these big companies that were coming into Russia. And I started as a lowly coder, like making this company's products more customizable and more localized to the Russian market at the time, to eventually, like in a few years, as a young Gosling, becoming CTO of the company. And so our clients were McDonald's, Procter & Gamble, Colgate, Siemens. Like these were the kinds of clients we've worked with. It was fun. It was a really interesting period, and I was still a young kid with just fresh out of university with a diploma. But within the 5 years, 5-year period, I was it was an interesting ride. This company grew so fast, and we just had to learn so much so quickly. That was a really interesting experience. In 1998, some people may remember, there was a financial crisis. Russia defaulted on its debt, and things became really difficult economically. So I found a job in Toronto, and I came on a work permit first with my family, and then stayed there. So I'm a Canadian taxpayer, have been since 1999, but currently exploring Mexico's potential base for our next chapter. So there's always something that you leave behind. So the next nest that I left is my job in Toronto. So by 2004, so after the 9/11s and all the dot-com meltdowns and all this other stuff that affected the software industry in a bad way, I was essentially, like, we were a small consulting firm working with big companies. And I was in charge of sales and marketing, because no one else wanted to do it. Like everyone else was they wanted to do the technical stuff. And I was probably the least technical person of them all, even though I was fairly technical. They were just way more excited about that. And I was more excited about the business side. So they kind of dropped all the marketing and sales stuff on my plate, just abandoned it, and I picked it up, essentially. And I came across Harvey Jacobson, the guy who wrote the Google AdWords book, for Dummies, because we had a major national client in the restaurant space, and Harvey had some special reports about marketing for restaurants. And then from Harvey, I jumped to Perry Marshall. He recommended Perry, and Perry just started out his consulting gig, and published his newsletter and sold some 3-ring binders, like with a bunch of marketing knowledge that you could, at the time there wasn't much of this available, and that was a godsend in many ways. And only from Perry, like usually people discover like old school marketers first, and they go to the new school guys. I jumped from Perry to Dan Kennedy and small businesses and Gary Halbert and all those other marketing guys. And at some point, it just became frustrating my job, because I was learning all this stuff, but my teammates and my bosses, they didn't buy into these direct response marketing ideas. They didn't understand all this stuff. And I'm like, screw it. Just quit my job and became what I call a self-unemployed I spent more money on more courses. I wasn't ready for it at all. Joined groups like BNI, got involved in some MLMs and did affiliate marketing, did link building, did, a lot of things that a lot of people did at that time. But it wasn't until I decided to embrace my technical background again and merge it with my marketing knowledge and experience. And I've had a lot of experience at that point, even though my bank balance didn't show it. I did acquire a bunch of experience. And when I decided to merge these two things started to click in place for me. So Kevin Thompson, I was a marketing director for a company called Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise. Rick Thompson, Liz Thompson. They did a lot of work in the spirituality, law of attraction space. They had people like Wayne Dyer and Dalai Lama on their website. Mm-hmm. It was a really interesting gig. So when I finished working with them, I went on to continue setting up joint ventures between different people who had courses or they had audiences, email audiences mostly at that time. So that's how I came across Kevin Thompson. I had a client who had a list, and Kevin had a course. I think he was still selling as a teleseminar. Like everyone just switched away from teleseminars to webinars, and Kevin was still running a teleseminar, and he was pulling more sales than anyone else in the industry. I think he was still doing great as a teleseminar guy, and he was selling a course related to how to set up a web page and start buying clicks on Google and make a profit. Like a very simple setup. So I basically headhunted Kevin. I called him essentially to bring him to my client to set up a joint venture where Kevin would promote my client's courses to his list, and we would promote Kevin's teleseminar to our list. Mm-hmm. And things worked out great. Sales showed up, but my client decided not to pay Kevin his affiliate commission.
Oh.
Right, which happens in the marketing world sometimes, or a lot, depending on how you look at it. So I had to fire my client because the client refused to pay Kevin. And for several years, I carried this. I thought Kevin hated me for bringing him into this deal until I bumped into him. I think it was 2018, the Rosetta Stone event that Perry Marshall ran in Chicago. I bumped into Kevin and told him my side of the story. And that's how we became friends. He didn't even remember me. He didn't remember the episode. He didn't remember the money he lost. I mean, when I reminded him, he did remember it eventually, but yeah, he didn't care about what happened as much as I did.
Right. Okay, that's well, actually, I'll go on with that a little bit. So, from that, that's really fascinating how, your perception, you hung on it for years because you felt bad, and he completely forgot all about it. And so once you made that connection back again, did that really sort of embed your relationship between the two of you, because just from that one incident?
Yeah. So speaking of merging the technical knowledge and the marketing knowledge, the way it happened and the way it led me to starting this agency, there are two pivotal events that happened. One is the event of me co-founding a local business with a friend. Mm-hmm. We were having beers. A friend is actually my brother-in-law, very close friend and relative. But we're having beers. He's a bit younger. So his graduation was more recent than mine. So, and he goes, well, when I was a student, he goes, I would make a few $100s in an afternoon by posting an ad on Kijiji or Craigslist about hanging TVs on walls and helping people install a TV on the wall. And myself and my friend would go and put a couple of screws in the wall and hang TV and make a few $100s. Like, do you think this can be a business? I go, well, I don't know, but I have a free $100 voucher from Google. Let's find out. So I built a little web page. I fed Google its own money. We got some clicks, we got some phone calls, we got some orders. We broke even on this $100 that wasn't even mine to begin with. We made profit the very first month, and for several years we ran this little business. And I was responsible for lead generation, meaning all of marketing, writing content, SEO, link building, collecting reviews, setting up call tracking, setting up analytics, running ads on Google and Bing, the whole marketing bit. And I learned so much by doing it myself, and so much by spending my own money, because there's no better training for a media buy than spending your own money. Like, when you're learning things, like, it teaches you so much so quickly. Like, most of my guys that work with me right now, at some point they tried to start a business, or they were part of the business, and they had to spend their own cash as they were learning media buying. And these are my best media buyers right now on my team, and my best strategists, so account managers, because like what you have in your muscle memory from an experience of spending your money, and very often wasting your own money. Like, you treat clients as budgets, like, very differently than if you just finish the course or write a book. So
you got skin in the game.
For sure. By the way, Skin in the Game is one of my favorite books by Nicholas Nassim Taleb. Should be a required reading for every entrepreneur or every marketer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I agree. So Skin in the Game is a big deal. Like, there's a feedback loops, right? Like, we learn, like, everything. Like, nature learns from feedback loops, right? We are part of nature. We learn from this. That's what Skin in the Game is. Like, it's an immediate feedback loop. Like, you learn from your immediate experience, from the immediate feedback that like, you get the result, and it has to either hurt you or be a pleasant one. But if there's no feedback loop, there's no learning.
That's exactly it. And one of the things that I tell people, Alex, when I'm coaching and speaking, is if you look in my whole metaphor is all about nature. And so if you just watch nature and learn from nature, it will teach you a lot. But nature doesn't try. Nature just does. And then there's a feedback loop, and it learns from itself, right? And it's
that's right. Yeah,
perpetual motion. And so just watch nature, and it will teach you a lot about business.
It doesn't try, but it tests.
But it just does. Yes, it doesn't try. It does. Exactly.
Yeah. That's the difference between trying and testing, right?
Yeah.
Testing is part of doing. Your purpose is to collect feedback, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to take you back just a little bit. There's a ton to unpack, and we could probably spend oodles of time here, but I do want to be a good steward of time. But I want to go way back to your beginnings as a Gosling in Russia. And I just out of interest's sake, would you mind telling me about just a little bit about your family, about a little bit your mom and dad and growing up in Russia? Because I think that's really fascinating, your beginnings of starting there to where you ended up to today.
My mom was a teacher. They both retired right now. My mom was a teacher. My dad was a teacher as well, but also he ran kind of like a Boy Scout organization, where a bunch of us would, as kids, he would, there would be a bunch of kids who would take their backpacks and go on a trip somewhere. In most of the time would be in our region. So we would study local history, especially the history of World War II. There were some major battles fought in that place. So my dad is a historian. He wrote several books on the Kursk battle, the Battle of Kursk of 1943. And very often we would go to other places. So I traveled much of former Soviet Union, especially the European part of it. I guess as part of this program, we went to a bunch of places in Belarus, Ukraine, Georgia, Russia. Like it was a lot of fun memories of that time for sure.
Yeah, what's
I'm not
interesting.
sure. Where do you want to take this? I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, that's fine. No, I just want to get a little bit of feedback because just the reason I'm asking the question is by listening to you talk, you just you come across as you're a lifelong learner.
Oh, for sure.
Everything
Yeah.
that you've said has led me to believe that you're just constantly learning, constantly growing, constantly challenging, learning, and it never stops. And that's what I was asking, going back to about your parents. I mean, they were both teachers, and your dad was a historian, Boy Scout. So obviously, your humble beginnings have played a rather crucial role in where you are today, and that's where I was taking that.
Yeah, very sure. Very
So
sure.
yeah, so it was just interesting listening to you. That's why I was going there. So so Alex, what's the most impactful thing that's happened to you that's ruffled your feathers? And that can be both either a positive situation or a negative situation, that really got you going and really forced you to change. It ruffled your feathers. And how did you respond to it?
Well, maybe so many episodes, but the one that led that we can call the inception point of the current business that I'm in, the current agency, Clickmakers, and that would be a consulting gig I had with a company in the Silicon Valley. It was an open source startup with clients like Netflix and Cisco and like a bunch of big guys.
Mm-hmm.
We were a group of engineers with the CEO responsible for sales and me responsible for all the marketing. Like I was the marketing department, not the head of the marketing department. I was the head and the body and everything. And like I was it. Like I was in charge of Google Ads, email marketing automations. Well, the team would contribute a lot of blog content because it was super technical.
Mm-hmm.
We were targeting DevOps, like engineers. Like it was engineers doing work for creating products for other engineers.
Mm.
But as far as marketing, like I was doing all of it. So the company was Series A funded, looking for Series B. In this process, they came across a buyer, a $2 billion company called Brocade. They decided to buy them, lock, stock, and barrel. Great event for everyone. Everyone gets a big bonus. I get fired. And I did not see this coming, even though I should have. I mean, I'm a contractor. I mean, they were not wrong in firing me because now the big company had a huge marketing department and a huge budget. But this made me realize that sometimes the better the job you do as a marketer, the sooner you help this company graduate to the next level, and like you may no longer be there for that next chapter of the history. Like you may be done. Your job is to get them from this to there, right? From here to there, but not beyond this point. That's a job. We're there for a specific period in their growth. And that made me think that, the consulting gigs, doing it on my own, as much as I enjoyed it, that's probably not the best way to grow it into a business. And I actually need to build a team around me. And that's when I started focusing on that, finding people who are smarter than me, more capable than me. And I have people like this in my life now. And we've been growing at the clip of 100% annually, revenue-wise, but also headcount-wise as a team. And we're a truly global team now. I'm between Canada and Mexico, but we have a US team who are spread across, I think, all time zones. We have people in California and LA and Seattle, Minnesota, Florida, Colorado. I hope I didn't forget anyone. Then we have a couple of guys in Europe, Italy, Romania, a bunch of guys in Ukraine, one guy in Bahrain, and one guy in South Korea currently.
Wow.
And then we have a data team in India and my co-founder in New Zealand. So it's it makes it for a crazy daily schedule, but it's kind of working because it's been quite interesting. So basically, I realized I need a bunch of clients that I can work with at any moment in time, so that we help one of them graduate. That becomes a celebration, not a funeral, right?
So it's kind of, when I was listening to you talk about that, it's sort of what it reminds me of working yourself out of a job.
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. That happens a lot. So we have an entire slide in our official pitch deck, an entire slide of just logos of companies we helped graduate. Like when we got fired because we did a really good job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you get to, so from my metaphor, and that's sort of along the same lines as when I work with companies, is my goal is to kick them out of the nest, right? You groom them, you help them grow, right, and you work together, and then you kick them out of the nest, and they get to fly on their own.
Yeah, but it's a good metaphor would be a medical professional, right? A true doctor would not want to keep seeing you year after year after year, right? You can't come to them with a specific problem. They fix this problem for you. You say goodbyes, and until there's another problem, you don't see each other.
Right.
Right. So same idea. We help them. They come to us with a specific goal. They have Series A, Series B funding, and maybe they want to go public. Well, we're probably not going to be the agency to take them public in most cases, but we will get them to the next phase.
Right. Yeah, I love that. And I love the metaphor too of saying, a doctor doesn't want to have repeat patients, right? Then, you want to be able to
a good doctor.
Yes. No, exactly. And you want to help them grow and get them better. And then hopefully if you never see them again, then that's success.
That's right.
Yeah, no, I get that. So, you were talking a little bit about your team, Alex, and this leads me right into the next question. And, the geese fly with 71% more efficiency when flying in a V formation than flying alone. So there's a reason behind why they do that. So what do you think is the secret to getting a team flying in that formation?
We're trying to figure this out every day. Like I have probably some parts of the answer. I don't know if I have the answer, but we have an amazing team, and we have a remote team, and most of my guys have never met each other IRL, like in real life. Like some of us have met, but most of us have not, especially since we've been growing so quickly, and especially since our team in Ukraine is not accessible right now because of the war. So gosh, that's such a good question. We honestly, like this is what I spend so much time thinking about. How do we work as a team? How do we fly in the V formation better, right, and become more efficient? Communication, that's number one. When you're not in the same physical space, it may be more difficult, but when you have the right processes and the right people, like it doesn't work for everyone. Like there are people who need to be in a physical space with their team. We just find the guys who are very happy to be working from wherever they are, the way I am working from wherever I am, and connect with others over Zoom, on Slack. Like we practically live in Slack. We have regular, like we set up group calls and group meetings, and we cross-train each other. So whenever someone discovers something new about Google Ads, we have regular meetings where this person can present their discoveries and teach the rest of the team about this new thing that they've been working on. So communication is number one. That's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm. And how do you find it now? This is really interesting because I mean, with the whole COVID thing that happened, I mean, and I know that obviously your business had stayed virtual, but there's so many businesses that that we were getting together, in a room, and we were collaborating and we're in person. And then there's, of course, COVID separated all that. And then now they went into this whole aspect of doing things virtually. And now we're getting to a time where we're starting to get back together again. What I'm seeing is that people want to be back together again. They want to be in the same room. They want to collaborate. But what
some people,
that's where
not alone.
That's what I was going next. And it's been really fascinating because it's really shone a light on this where I'll keep this as simple as possible, but we had the people who are more introverted and say, you know what, I'm very happy to be working in my office at home and doing my job, and I'm very content. There was people like myself who I tried working from home for about 2 months, and I was not successful at all, and it would really drove me crazy through that 2-year period of time, to the point I actually came in and I renovated my other office space and everything to create more space and whatnot in order to actually fulfill myself. So there's some people who are totally content being out there on their own. And there's some people, and I'll just use myself as an example, is like, I need to get out and be with other people. I'm so extroverted that being by myself, I need that outside source in order to feel like I'm actually contributing. And I just want to sort of share that with you and see what your thoughts on that, because of the fact of your industry.
It's each human's psychology is different. Like each one of us wired slightly differently, and there are certain people who can succeed and prefer to succeed in an environment where they're not necessarily physically close to the rest of their team. They don't need to be interfacing with them constantly. And the virtual technologies are so good these days. We're meeting on Zoom right now. Like we literally thousands of kilometers or miles, whatever yardstick you use, from each other, but we're able to connect and converse and exchange ideas. It does not replace, meeting in person and having, breaking bread and having a coffee or something, right? It's there's still room for that. So it was a transition for me primarily because I'm the business development guy. I don't really run ads anymore. I don't run client accounts. I have people way more smart and way more capable than me on that job. So my job is actually meeting people. So it was a bit of a transition for me, to learn how to network and build relationships, and find new business by not being able to travel, not being able to meet people like one-on-one physically or in the seminar environment. So that was a bit of a transition, and I would say that we were able to change the way that we do things and succeed and grow. But generally, we just hire the people who prefer to work from home. Our best media buyers are women. They're young moms, like with kids, and they don't want to be away from their kids for too long, right? So they have babysitters who come into their homes, and so they want this work and they want this fulfillment, but they don't want to be away from their child for like an entire day. Right? And so that's actually us offering a virtual position is a huge benefit to them. They prefer to work this way. At some point, I was trying to build a team, at least in one geographic location, with the idea of maybe opening an office at some point. But now, like the way things are in Ukraine, I'm realizing that probably was not the best decision, because It puts a bunch of guys at the same time at risk. Yeah, you just find the people who are used to working remotely and they actually like it. Like I prefer this mode. I've had office jobs, and I've worked remotely, and remote works for me better.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm the exact opposite. So
Yep.
remote didn't work for me. So I'm the opposite of you. And again, there's no right and there's no wrong, but it's so interesting now that that's become the norm. Where before, I think if we look back at 3, 4, 5 years ago, to say, could we all do remote work, and it would have been questionable. But now it's a complete reality.
I tried to have an office early on in my consulting career. I rented the room from in my accountant's office. He had a spare room that he used as storage. So I actually rented a storage space, took out all his crap out of this room, and turned that room into my office. And I was paying him for the rent. And then after about a year, I realized I'm not using this room all that much, and I don't do a whole lot here. Because I'm out there talking to clients, meeting clients. I'm on site with my clients.
Right.
Or it's just easy for me to do work from home. Why to have this commute? I'm not using the office, so I gave up having it and gave up and saved some money. And then when I started building my team, I guess I just attracted the type of people who prefer working from home anyway.
Right. You replicated yourself.
More or less, yeah.
Yeah.
More or less.
Interesting. So, what are you doing right now, Alex, to better the pond? What are you doing to make the world a better place? What ripples are you creating, and how are you inspiring others to do the same?
A big ripple that's going on right now is the advent of artificial intelligence and machine learning in our industry. Our industry is one of the first to be disrupted by artificial intelligence. So we are at the cutting edge of it. Like we're playing with all these technologies. We've been playing with some version of machine learning for the last, my gosh, when did Google start rolling out smart bidding? I think it was 2015, maybe earlier. So for 8, maybe even 10 years, we've been working with some version of machine learning. And we've seen it, improve slowly, then faster, then just exponentially. The way we run ads is very different from the way we used to run ads even a few years ago. The last couple of years have been fundamental in shifting the foundational concepts of media buying online. Nowadays, machine buy ads, machines run ads, run the machines. And when you run a machine, like you become more of an animal whisperer, like a tamer. It's about training, like it's like dog training. The metaphor uses dog training. Like we had a dog, she's gone now, but she was adopted, so she did not get proper training when she was a little pup. So she just couldn't help herself. Like when she saw a rug, she would pee on it. So we wouldn't have any rugs in the house, right? So when you have a new puppy in the house, how do you make this puppy how to train this puppy not to pee on the carpet, to pee outside? It's so much easier. The carpet is right here, right? And outside is cold and wind and, who wants to go outside? So it takes training, right? It's all about feedback loops. It's about giving a doggy a treat when it's appropriate, not just because she peed somewhere, only when she peed where you want her to pee, right?
Yeah.
So Google and Facebook and or Meta, all these media networks, Pinterest, Twitter, Taboola, they all run on the same principle, on these feedback loops. They all expect a treat from you, a treat in the form of a conversion event or conversion pixel fire or conversion API call that goes to the network. And what most of us marketers do, especially when it comes to lead generation campaigns where it's detached from revenue, on the timeline, you have a lead today. This lead may not become revenue, months or even years down the line. The problem is when a lead comes in, the leads are of different quality, and crappy leads are easier to generate. They're easier to find. So when you fire conversion events on every lead that comes in, you're telling Google, hey, I don't care where you pee in the carpet, that's fine. Good doggy. Here's a treat. So what's Google going to do is going to find you more bad leads. It's going to keep peeing on the carpet. Right. So this is the message that I'm trying to deliver to to advertisers and media buyers to understand that you have to deal with Google like a feral animal that you need to train, that you need to tame.
That's fascinating. I've never really looked at it that way, the way that you just positioned that. And just thinking about the fact that you actually have to train it. So otherwise, you just keep getting the same behavior, and you just keep getting the same behavior, and you're not really getting anywhere, but you think you are.
Exactly. Like we're delegating a lot of decisions to the machine these days. Like I'm no longer, as a media buyer, I'm no longer deciding how much to bid on this auction or that auction. Like each ad impression is a real-time auction. So someone is loading, I don't know, an article on Forbes, there's got to be a widget that's displaying the ad. So this widget, like as the page is loading in someone's browser, right, behind the scenes, there's an auction that happens instantly, milliseconds, literally milliseconds. The machines are bidding and deciding like who gets to display the ad here, right? It's a very complex process. Like a very simple thing for a user. Hey, I have a bunch of ads on this page. I'm reading the article, I'm seeing an ad. It's an auction. Like when you do a Google search, as a Google search page is loading, there's an auction being run. There's 4 spots at the top, 4 spots at the bottom, or whatever the layout of the page happens to be for your search. These are auctions. And we are not there. Like as the page is loading, I'm not there pushing the buttons, hey, bid more, bid less, I'm not around. The machine is there in those milliseconds. The machine has access to literally thousands of signals about who's watching this page, like where the context. Like, is this person at home on his or her computer, or is he standing in line at the 7-Eleven right now on their phone, killing time, paying for their gas? Very different context, right? Not only the demographics of who this person is, like what kind of car they drive, how big is the mortgage in the house, if they have a house in the first place. Like there's all the signal, but also like contextual stuff, the behavioral stuff, intent, like what did they search prior to seeing this ad? Like what did they look at? What did they buy online, or what did they consider buying? So these signals are factored into the decision of the value of the specific impression to you, the advertiser. And this decision is made by the machine, not by human anymore. Right. So that's why the machine needs to be trained to be able to make better decisions on your behalf. Like you train the animal, then this animal has to perform when you're not around.
Right.
That's the trick.
That's the trick. And that's the ripples that you're creating.
That's right.
So just a question on that. Where do you see this going in the next 5 to 10 years, Alex? You're seeing, just like anything else, if you look at this, I'm very simply like, you look at back in the day with computers starting and you jump, if you remember having a Commodore 64 but all of a sudden it came to a point where it just went exponential because the growth went so fast. And do you kind of see that same curve happening now? And where do you see that going down the road?
Peter Thiel lamented just a few years ago that we've been expecting from our innovators flying cars and things like and I can't remember what else he mentioned, but we expecting flying cars, and what we got instead is 140 characters. He was taking a jab at Twitter. I think it was around 2012 or something like that when he said that. So basically, there were a lot of people frustrated with the slow pace of progress, technology progress a decade ago. But I think we came out of the slump, and now it just feels like it's just going to take off, and it's anyone's guess where we're going to end up in a few years. But the change that is happening right now is dizzyingly fast and so profound. I'm not going to make any prediction. I was just going to say that the world is going to be very different in just a few years. That I do know, but oh, for sure, yeah, it's disrupting so many things. Everything's going to change. Not all of it is bad. A lot of people are scared for their jobs, not incorrectly in many cases. Like, I think the AI is going to take over a lot of our jobs, but also the AI will enable a lot of new jobs that didn't exist before. Like, if you look again, if you look at history and go back, 110 years, for example, 120, just even 100 years, like a lot of, like when farmers got the tractor, right?
That was a game changer.
That was a game changer, right? All of a sudden, you can plow a much bigger field. You didn't need to walk behind horses or cows or bulls like the entire day, right?
Yeah.
But now you have to learn, how to. Not only do you need to understand agriculture now, you still need to understand agriculture, right? But you also need to learn how to change oil and fix the gearbox and right and transmission stuff, and how not to burn your clutch, and and if you put some bad fuel in, how to things go bad for you, like how to fix the machine now, so that's what we had. Like, we in our field, like we've been given tractor. All of a sudden, we're going to be able to do so much work so much faster. Content creators, advertisers, like a lot of this change is actually welcome, because a lot of, like I just said, like we don't, like there are not as many knobs to twist or levers to jerk inside the Google Ads account anymore. Right? It's about setting up things the right way, creating those feedback loops for the machine to learn, and then stepping aside and letting the machine do its job. Right? So, like back in the day, like our jobs were all about spreadsheets and micromanaging little campaigns, breaking a big campaign into smaller pieces and managing each piece individually, like, and automating a lot of things through some scripts and stuff. Like most of it is gone, and whatever's not gone will be gone very soon. But now it's about strategy. What are we trying to achieve as a business? Like, what is the business model here? How do we make a profit here? What level of profit is going to be optimal for growth? How do we achieve the right level of profit and still enable growth, but do not lose a short, right? Like, you have the dichotomy there. What is the right offer? Who are we doing it for? What is the psychology of a customer that we that we're selling this product for? Which problem are we solving for this person? Like, what itch are we trying to scratch? Like, a lot of the things is where these things, more strategic things, will remain in our domain for the next little while, as far as I can see. And the machines are going to be very helpful at figuring out research. Like, we already use tools like ChatGPT right now as a marketing team to facilitate our research. Like, our research takes less time now, because we can find all the pain points, all the angles, not all of them, but a lot of these ideas that we didn't even think about, now we can have the machine surface these problems and angles and ideas and, aches and pains and habits and like all these things that we would normally spend a lot of time researching ourselves, by interviewing people, by Googling things, by going on discussion forums and Facebook groups and just to understand the language that people use. Now, a lot of this stuff can be done by, a lot of this research can be aggregated and done by the machine and just given to us to make decisions about our campaigns. So yeah, we're just becoming much more effective and efficient as media buyers, as marketers, as business owners and advertisers, thanks to the machine learning proficiency and capabilities that have been given to us. Like even this little bit that we've been receiving so far, it's extremely fascinating. Like I think it's going to be a very different world in a very short time. Like it's going to be very different.
It's a bigger, faster tractor.
It is.
Yeah, interesting. That's fascinating. So, Alex, what's one lesson that you've learned along your path that you would share to an entrepreneur starting today?
Hire before you can afford it, and hire people who are smarter than you. Like if I were to change one thing about my path, I wouldn't change anything except one thing. I should have started hiring sooner.
That's an interesting point. Hire before you can afford it. How do you think on a young entrepreneur starting out with, you got so much money, so much budget, you're starting out and saying, you can't afford this, but get people on board.
You can't afford not to. We just can't afford not to.
That's interesting. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that on the podcast yet. So that's an actual first. So that is really that's an incredible insight that you shared, and I appreciate that.
Well, the thing is, like, if you hire people who are more experienced, who are smarter than you, like, you will pay anyway. Like, figure out how you're going to pay for this person when you can't afford it. I don't know. Get a second job. Wait tables at night, but find the money to hire someone. And you can use geographic arbitrage for most jobs these days. You can go overseas and hire someone, but I mean, America has become much more affordable as well. Or Canada, right? You can find good talent, even if you cannot buy a full person. Like, hire them for a few hours, but hire other people to shorten the learning curve, because you're gonna pay for this anyway. You can pay a little bit now and learn fast and get the results faster, because you're going to be benefiting from other people learning from their mistakes. Or you can make these mistakes by yourself and pay more. And, it'll take longer.
Pay me now or pay me later. Yeah. So that's great advice. That's great advice to a young entrepreneur. Absolutely. And I want to thank you for that, Alex. So I have one more question for you that is not on the list. And so if you were standing on a mountain and the whole world was intently listening to you, what would you say?
Oh gosh. It's a big one.
I know that's a big one. Yep.
Not fair.
Gonna put you on the spot.
The one thing I'll say is sit down with people and have a conversation. Like, so many problems in the world can be solved when we just sit down and talk, like the way we're doing right now, right? When we get to know others. I mean, I think that's the solution to pretty much every problem we experience right now as a civilization.
Just sit down and talk, communicate.
Sit down and talk. Yep. Have a conversation.
There you go. There we have it. The wisdom from Alex of the day. So, so Alex, I really, I mean, all the way from Mexico, I know you're down there, which is fantastic. And I really want to thank you for your time and sharing your stories and your experiences and your knowledge and obviously your wisdom. If anyone wants to find you, Alex, where do they go?
Clickmakers.io. It's not .com.io, and it's clickmakers plural. We are the makers of clicks. Alex at clickmakers.com. Oh, .io. Just made a mistake myself. Terrible. And if anyone's looking for more help with data stuff, like marketing data, integrations, all this analytics, complex data stuff, then that would be MeasureBit.com or Alex at MeasureBit.com.
Okay. I'll make sure that's in the show notes, so that that people can actually go there. And then MeasureBits.com.
MeasureBit.com. Yeah.
Okay, so clickmakers.io.
I was lucky to find a really good .com domain in that case.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what about on social media? Are you active out there? Can we find you out there?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, Facebook, those three mostly.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, there you have it, folks. We had a great time today with Alex, and this is Warren Barry, and I'm flocking off to take you beyond the pond to better the pond, because we're better together. Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you, Warren. It was a pleasure.